She was drunk, as she confessed. I was never attracted to you, and I can't stop seeing other men. Her words hit me like a slap. While she passed out, I made my decision. By sunrise, I vanished. No notes, no goodbyes. My name's Phil, and I've always been the kind of guy who believed that hard work could fix almost anything. It's just how I was raised. You put your head down, you grind, and everything else falls into place. That mindset shaped my life, especially when it came to my marriage. For as long as I can remember, my days were a blur of meetings, deadlines, and deals. I worked hard. I'd wake up and hustle all day. And by the time I got home, I was too drained to do much more than say goodnight to my wife. But I told myself it was all worth it. I was building a life for us, making sure she'd never have to worry about anything. When I wasn't working, she was all I thought about. How to make her happy. How to give her the life she deserved. I'd bring her gifts when I traveled for work. I'd plan weekend getaways to make up for lost time. It was never perfect, but I figured she understood. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up and trying. At least that's what I thought. Looking back, I realize I might have gotten it wrong. But at the time, I didn't see that. I thought working harder meant loving harder. Lately, though, things had felt off. She barely acknowledged me anymore. At first, I brushed it aside. We'd only been married for 2 years. I figured we were just settling into the routine of married life. Deep down, I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't want to believe it. I told myself she was just stressed, tired, or going through a phase. I thought if I worked a little harder and showed her how much I cared, everything would go back to how it was. I was convinced that love and effort could fix anything. Turns out I was wrong. Very wrong. When I realized things were tense between us, I decided to do something about it. I thought maybe a romantic dinner could help us reconnect. I don't know, maybe I was being naive, but I believed in trying. I spent the entire afternoon preparing. I cooked her favorite meal, chicken parmesan with garlic mashed potatoes, something I hadn't made since our first date. I set the table with candles, dimmed the lights just right, and picked a playlist of soft, slow songs she used to love. It was my way of saying, I see you, I miss you, and I'm trying. When she walked through the door, she looked surprised. Wow, she said, glancing around, her eyes landing on the table. For a second, I thought I saw a flicker of something, gratitude maybe? She kissed my cheek, sat down, and smiled. We started eating, and the conversation flowed, light and easy. She complimented the food, joked about how I was secretly a better cook than her. And for the first time in months, she laughed genuinely. And in that moment, I thought maybe we could find our way back. But after her third glass of wine, things went downhill fast. She was drunk. It was subtle at first. She leaned back in her chair, her expression loosening, her words coming slower, freer. I didn't think much of it until she set her glass down, looked at me, and said, "You're a nice guy. You make sure I'm okay. That's why I'm here with you." I froze. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice steady, even though my stomach was twisting. She laughed soft, but with a hint of pity. "I mean, I've never really been attracted to you. Not in that way." Her words hit me like a freight train, but she didn't stop there. She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand like she was telling me a casual story. "You're sweet, gentle, safe, but you're not my type." Then she started describing her type, someone rougher, with a darker vibe. Someone who isn't afraid to break the rules. The complete opposite of me. And then, as if it wasn't bad enough, she dropped the bomb. When I met him, my type, I just couldn't resist. One thing led to another, and she trailed off, but I didn't need her to finish. I knew what she was saying. I sat there, nodding like a fool, as my wife poured out truths that shattered me. My chest felt heavy like I couldn't breathe, but I kept my face calm. On the outside, I was composed, but inside, something in me snapped. This wasn't an apology. It wasn't even regret. It was a drunken justification, as if she wanted me to understand her reasons for betraying me. And at that moment, I realized I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to fight. I just needed to let her finish and then decide what to do next. When I went to bed that night, I knew there was no going back. Her words kept replaying in my head. How I wasn't her type, how she stayed with me because I was a nice guy, how she found what she wanted elsewhere. It wasn't just the betrayal that stung. It was the casual way she admitted it. Lying there in the dark, listening to her soft snores, I felt no anger, only clarity. Fighting with her wouldn't change anything. She'd already shown me who she was, and I believed her. Confronting her would only give her the satisfaction of justifying herself. She didn't deserve that. She didn't deserve a fight. She didn't deserve closure. She deserved to see what life without me really meant. By the time the sun came up, I had made my decision. I wouldn't be there when she woke up. I'm not a man who does things impulsively. When I act with precision. That morning, I left the house like I always did, quietly, deliberately, with no sign that anything was out of the ordinary. Except this time, I wasn't coming back. The first call I made was to my lawyer. I told him to prepare the divorce papers and include everything I needed to separate my life from hers. Next, I called my accountant. He was a sharp man, and within hours, he started liquidating my shares in our jointly owned investments. By the end of the day, my accounts were empty, and I had full control over my assets. Then I called my family. I didn't give them all the details. I didn't need to, but I made one thing clear. Don't entertain her. Don't share my whereabouts. If she calls, you tell her nothing. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done without having anyone to cushion the fall. Finally, I left a message with my lawyer to deliver to her when she inevitably tried to reach me. She'll get the divorce papers soon. No explanations. No apologies. Just the cold, hard reality of what she'd lost. A few weeks later, the papers were served. I heard from my lawyer that she tried to reach out, calls, emails, even showing up at his office. I didn't respond. She begged for an explanation. But what could I possibly say that she didn't already know? At first, she didn't want to sign the papers. She was hesitant, dragging her feet. Maybe she thought she could somehow salvage what we had, or maybe she just didn't want to lose the stability I provided. But when she saw the financial settlement, she caved. I wasn't surprised when she signed. After all, she always prioritized herself. And just like that, the chapter was closed. You know, when I walked out of that marriage, I wasn't thinking about what would happen to her. I just wanted to be free from her lies, her disrespect, and her complete lack of care for me as a person. I thought, let her have the life she wants. And for a while it seemed like she did. At first, she seemed to enjoy her new life. She was free, single, and financially secure, thanks to the settlement. I'd worked hard to build something for us, and she got her share when we divorced. She started going out more, throwing herself into her usual distractions, nights out, new clothes, and, of course, new men. I heard she even joked about how she finally got to live the life she deserved. But here's the thing about people like her. They never think past the moment. She thought freedom meant doing whatever she wanted without consequences. Life doesn't work like that. Eventually, it catches up with you. One of those freedoms caught up with her in a big way. She ended up pregnant. I found out through a mutual acquaintance who still couldn't resist passing along the gossip. Apparently, it wasn't a planned thing. Not that I'd expect it to be. The father? He vanished the moment she told him. No calls, no texts, nothing. Just gone. She was left to deal with it alone. And it didn't stop there. The settlement money? She burned through it like it was nothing. By the time the baby came, she was in serious debt. She had to sell our old house. Well, her house, at that point. It was the last thing left of the life we shared. Then there were her friends, or what was left of them. You see, people like her always attract the same kind of people. Shallow, selfish, and only around when things are fun. When she started asking for help, money, babysitting, a shoulder to cry on, they disappeared one by one. I guess even her best stories couldn't keep them entertained anymore. She got what she thought she wanted, freedom. But that kind of freedom comes with a price. She lost everything that mattered because she never valued it in the first place. The truth? I didn't feel sorry for her. I wasn't sitting somewhere rubbing my hands together, celebrating her downfall either. I just didn't care. She was a chapter I'd closed. Some people think they're escaping something when they're really running straight into a wall. That was her. She ran, and when she hit that wall, there was no one left to catch her. Years had passed. My life had moved on, not in some flashy, dramatic way, but quietly, steadily. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Then, one day, she found me. I was at home, sitting by the window with a book in hand, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened the door, there she was. She looked the same, not looking bad, put together, carrying herself with that air of confidence I once admired. Her eyes met mine, steady and searching, as if trying to gauge my reaction. Seeing her again stirred nothing in me but a cold, quiet detachment. I didn't know how she tracked me down. All I felt was disgust. She stood there for a moment, staring at me as if waiting for permission to speak. I didn't give it. Finally, she started talking without waiting for any more approval. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I've been trying to find you for years," she began, her voice low and shaking. "I needed to tell you how sorry I am. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, and I paid for it every single day since." She paused, waiting for me to say something, but I didn't. I just leaned back on the front door, watching her squirm. "I thought I could have everything," she continued, her hands trembling as she clasped them together. "I thought I could find excitement somewhere else and still keep you. But I was wrong. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone." Her words spilled out, desperate and messy. She told me about how her life had fallen apart, the failed relationships, the debt, the loneliness. She even admitted that she was left pregnant and alone. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face, and said, "Please, I need you. I've never stopped needing you." I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. I wanted to make sure she understood that this wasn't a conversation. It was the end of one. "You made your choice," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You were never attracted to me, remember? I wasn't your type. So, go find your type and see if he wants you now." She flinched as if my words had physically struck her. But I didn't stop there. "I don't care what you regret. I don't care how much you've suffered. That's your burden to carry, not mine. Don't ever show your face to me again." I stepped back, closed the door, and walked away without a second thought. I didn't need her explanations, her apologies, or her regret. That part of my life was over, and there was no reason to reopen it. As I walked away, I thought about the man I had become. Losing her had been painful. It had torn me apart in ways I didn't know I could break. But it also forced me to rebuild. And I am still rebuilding. Sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone who betrays you is your absence. And sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself is to walk away and never look back. In losing her, I found myself, and that I realized was the only closure I would ever need. So let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Honestly, think about it for a second. You've just sat through a dinner you planned to bring back some spark into your marriage, only to have your wife, the woman you vowed to spend your life with, tell you, between sips of wine no less, that you're not her type. She even had the nerve to laugh and explain how she's been with other men behind your back. What would you do? Would you stay and fight for someone who doesn't value you? Or would you walk away? Look, I'm not here to tell anyone what's right or wrong, but let me share something I've learned the hard way. If you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, where someone shows you they don't respect you or your love, you've got to stop making excuses for them. Don't let their lack of appreciation chip away at your self-worth. The truth is, people treat you how you let them treat you. If they can step all over you once, they'll do it again, and it only gets worse over time. Leaving isn't easy, I get that. It's painful. It's messy. And yeah, it's lonely at first. But you've got to think about the long term. Maybe you're scared of what happens after. Scared of starting over, of being alone. But let me tell you something. Being alone is a hell of a lot better than being with someone who makes you feel like you're not enough. And when you finally walk away from someone who doesn't see that, you open the door for something better, even if that better thing is just finding peace within yourself. Thank you for watching.